district employees, and a reporting requirement for the mayor and the council to access any changes in mental health trends or ongoing demands so that we may utilize a raw data-driven approach in our evaluations and ultimately the development of the annual budget. Mental health illnesses are common. And according to the National Institute of Mental Health, 1 in 5 U.S. adults lives with a mental health illness. And mental illnesses are common in the District of Columbia and possibly amongst our workforce. Mental illness or mental health conditions include a variety of health disorders, such as anxiety, attention deficit, hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, bipolar disorder, depression, eating disorder, sleeping disorder, and restlessness, post-traumatic stress disorder, psychosis, pain disorder, general stress, traumatic events syndrome, social anxiety disorder, and extreme nervousness. All can lead to outpatient treatment, hospitalization, and regrettably, ultimately, suicide. Although the cause of mental health illness is often not simple to identify, since the health pandemic of 2020, the impact on one's health continues and the demand for mental health treatment is increasing. More than 84% of psychologists who treat anxiety disorders have seen an increase since the start of the pandemic. Many of us acknowledge that mental health is an extremely important issue to address, and individuals' whole health impacts other aspects of livelihood, including education, public safety, family dynamics, workplace culture, and other social issues that we are challenged with in modern times. Additionally, as this committee was tasked with reviewing the district's sexual harassment policies, it is equally or more important to address our employees' mental health well-being as the core of a productive workforce. To ensure that the district government is a safe and healthy workplace, we call into question what is the government's comprehensive approach to good mental health while performing our duties. Throughout the government, it's easy for employees to manage their physical health needs, but when we talk about mental health needs, the age-old stigma surfaces, and it is far easier to dismiss that aspect of healthy living. For example, when we trip or fall or have a physical ailment, we seek treatment from a healthcare professional. However, we generally do not give the same attention to addressing our mental health needs. Therefore, today, we look to review the HOLD Act before us to determine how we can encourage our district government employees to be a whole, healthy person in mind, body, and spirit. The second piece of legislation we will examine today is, of course, 25-782, which is Work Models Task Force Amendment Act of 2024. It would create a model that evaluates competitive work models for district government employees. Work models are defined as methods for organizing a work environment and determining where employees conduct daily tasks, as well as its implementations towards accountability and its implications by extension of the workplace culture. According to Indeed's Career Guide, there are 4 common work models. 1, fully remote. 2, office environment. 3, hybrid. And 4, deskless. As the world navigates through a post-pandemic new normal, it is important that we have an open and fruitful dialogue regarding the direction that the district government is taking on returning to work models. Moreover, This committee continues to hear concerns from government workers and the public regarding telework, physical office space issues in agencies, high office vacancies, revenue impacts, and inflexibilities that impact employee morale. To navigate through this post-pandemic life and set new norms, this legislation aims to open the conversation with experts and entertain feedback from employees and managers, labor unions of government and private sector workforce, and various customers, all impacted parties, to identify reliable approaches forward for an effective work environment for the good of the district through a healthy, productive, and competitive workforce. As such, establishing a task force will facilitate the necessary conversations to move the district government towards a productive and effective workforce policy backed by experience and data. So with that said, I'm happy to acknowledge any of my colleagues that may be on. Okay, perhaps they will join us later or certainly listen to the tape. So with that, that concludes my opening statement, and we will now hear from our public witnesses. We have 3 public witnesses, and then we will hear from our government witness. Our 3 public witnesses consist of Jacaria Carroll. I don't know if she's in. Okay. Chelsea Van Throck, which we understand is and she is with us, a virtual witness, and Mr. Kofi Onima, who is Vice President of AFGE Local 27, and you can join us at the witness table, sir. You are here with us. And we will start with Ms. Van Throff. You are virtual. We're happy to have you, and thank you for being here. And you may begin when you're ready, ma'am.
Morning. My last name is Van Thoth, but I'll start now. And I'd like to state that this version is updated from the one I submitted recently, so I'm going to email the updated version. To the DC Committee on Executive Administration and Labor and members of the community, it has been shown that on average, 135 lives are impacted for every death by suicide, and that those affected have an increased risk of dying by suicide as well. We know death by suicide triggers a ripple effect throughout the community that can last for generations. With this in mind, I urge the city to pass the Whole Amendment Act of 2024 and all other bills related to increasing mental health services, not just for district employees, but for all members of the general public. I start with suicide because although for many it is considered a distant consequence of struggling with mental health challenges, a worst case scenario, if you will, it is a constant reality in my life and for millions of people who have also lost loved ones in crisis. Some of you may know that I have advocated for a short-term suicide prevention method in the district in the wake of my late partner Peter's death by suicide. When the public commentary started coming in around this effort, many argued that we should be focusing on long-term prevention methods instead of a short-term preventing access to means method. And to that I replied, we can do both. Legislation like the Whole Amendment Act is how we prove that to be true. Increasing access to mental health services is the long-term solution to addressing the rising risk of suicide in our city. Overall, suicide is the 18th leading cause of death in Washington, D.C., and in 2019, more than 7 times as many people died by suicide than in alcohol-related motor vehicle accidents. Worse, according to federal guidelines, almost 95% of communities in DC did not have enough mental health providers to serve residents as recently as 2021. Research shows that depression, bipolar disorder, and substance use are strongly linked to suicidal thinking and behavior, which can be managed and prevented using specific treatments used by mental health professionals such as CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and dialectical behavioral therapy. Furthermore, certain medications used to treat depression or stabilize mood have been proven to help people reduce suicidal thoughts and behavior. I myself struggled with suicidal ideation for over 2 years, but through therapy, a partial inpatient treatment program, and the correct medications, I was able to work through my own feelings of hopelessness and go on to actively participate in life. This rings true for many who get as far as attempting suicide but survive, where 90% of those people go on to engage in life and die from unrelated causes. Of course, none of this matters if the person cannot access these services. At different points in my life, I have been on Medicaid, which would always put a halt to my mental health treatment regimen. Most recently, I was unable to access medications I needed for depression and anxiety because it was nearly impossible to find a provider in the district who takes Medicaid. Even just signing up for Medicaid took months and numerous phone calls with representatives who gave combating guidance and redirected me to other departments for hours on end. I was once on the phone with 2 reps from 2 different departments at once, one handling Medicaid sign-up and the other handling the website that finds you care, and they were both putting the responsibility on the other in handling my needs. These calls almost always ended in tears. People who sounded so sure of themselves and would tell me my problem was fixed would be invalidated by the next person to pick up the phone, where I would start all over again. 4 months. If my late partner was here, he could attest to the emotional strife this caused at the time. Fast forward to finally having Medicaid, and I learned that the provider who suggested I sign up for it didn't even accept it. I was unable to continue using their mental health services, and my hunt for a new provider was fruitless as I quickly learned that almost every therapist and mental health provider in the DMV is out of network for Medicaid and all other insurances. I also want to note that those seeking access to mental health services in the district can expect to pay 2.5 times the amount in out-of-pocket medical expenses than the general population seeking medical care. It is ironic and dangerous that the process of finding help and hope to cling onto can actually contribute to the hopelessness you are struggling with when you are trying to set up care. A feat in and of itself when experiencing a depressive episode, as it makes even the smallest tasks seem intimidating. In the end, I had to wait for my new job to start before I could again receive therapy and regain access to my medications. Oftentimes, losing care also forces a person to stop medications abruptly, which can lead to dangerous side effects. Our system is deeply flawed and does a disservice to our community. The need for increased mental health services before people find themselves in crisis is self-evident. A study from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration showed that substance use recovery was more prevalent among adults who received lifetime or past-year substance use treatment. Similarly, mental health recovery was more prevalent among adults who received past-year mental health treatment. These findings provide a clearer characterization of the factors associated with recovery among adults and how future efforts can foster a whole health approach to sustain recovery from mental health and substance use conditions. A 2021 meta-analysis of 20,234 related articles concluded that both pharmacotherapy and psychotherapy were effective in reducing suicidal behavior, and training general practitioners warrants wider implementation and testing in additional non-psychiatrist physician settings. Active follow-up of patients after discharge or a suicidal-related crisis should be routine, and restricting firearm access by at-risk individuals warrants wider use as well. But I digress. Prevention and intervention are key. Telehealth has the exciting ability to expand the geographic reach of suicide interventions, and it can be a natural fit for interventions like DBT, which already involves over-the-phone coaching. Speaking more to teleservices in this way of crisis hotlines, although more research is needed on the efficacy of availability of hotlines on long-term outcomes, one study showed counselors were able to identify at least one intervention to help the person at risk. In almost 60% of the calls, emergency services were contacted. Due to a large proportion of people with suicidal ideation across socioeconomic lines initially seeking treatment at emergency departments, further implementation research is crucial to figuring out how best to support emergency staff in screening and then connecting patients with services that they can access and will find useful. This is particularly pressing of an issue for teenagers, as DBT is the only well-validated effective treatment for youth suicide prevention. But most pediatric patients can't receive DBT because it is difficult to access and expensive. I'll refer back to my previous point. What good are services when they cannot even be accessed? In summary, effective suicide prevention is comprehensive, requiring a combination of efforts that work together to address different aspects of the problem, both long-term and short-term. 9 strategies have been shown to form an effective and holistic approach to addressing mental health challenges. identifying and assisting persons at risk, increasing help seeking, ensuring access to effective mental health and suicide care and treatment, supporting safe care transitions and creating organizational linkages, responding effectively to individuals in crisis, providing immediate and long-term post-intervention, enhancing life skills and resilience, and promoting social connectedness and support. We can't set a precedent for all of these factors here today, but we can address the need to ensure access to effective mental health and suicide care and treatment, and make a difference in thousands of lives in our community by doing so. One of the most effective methods of preventing suicide is to give suicidal individuals and those who care for them the thing they desperately need, which is time. This includes time for the suicidal risk to diminish, the time for the intense suicidal ideation to pass, and for someone to intervene with mental health support and resources. Suicidal feelings are often temporary, to the point where almost 50% are shown to be impulsive. And keeping people safe during those moments of crisis can get them through this critical period. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought. Mental health services can act as a delay earlier in the chain and a deterrent to an individual at risk, providing more time to get through future moments in crisis. Thank you for your attention to this urgent matter, and if you have pets, please be kind to your vet. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I think we have, I don't know whether it's Miss or Mrs. or Mr. Carol Jakari. Carol?
Jakia Carol.
Jakia, okay.
Yes, and it's Miss. Thank you, ma'am.
All righty, please proceed. Thank you.
Yes, good morning, council. My name is Jakia Carol. I'm an advocate in the District of Columbia. Sorry, let me turn my camera on. I apologize. I'm an advocate in the District of Columbia for over 7 years. I became homeless from the Commonwealth of Virginia, and I was forced to move here to the District of Columbia. Since I've been here, I've been working directly with the DC Council and the agencies that oversee us in poverty and oppression in the District of Columbia. By working with the ICH committee, which is the Interagency Committee for Homelessness, one of the issues that I have noticed by dealing with all of the different agencies to see the problems of business and operations. One of the major concerns with business and operations are that the staffing is not adequate. They do not have adequate education, skills, and experience. This is not the only problem. We are looking at the symptoms of issues of a broken system that is birthed in white hatred that economically oppresses us. So we do not deal with the issues of the economic oppression, which is used through the middle class and at the top to ensure that we are oppressed at the bottom. I have worked with you guys through all of the hate crimes, discrimination, and everything that has happened to me in my life to actually flatline my life so that I can actually show you and our people that it does not matter what we do to do better in life. If you decide that we don't have the right to have human rights, that this is acceptable through our democracy. I really would like you guys to look at working with these agencies to implement a partnership that you have already created with Microsoft 365, who has created a government and nonprofit platform for you that none of the organizations, including the Strategic Planning Committee under ICH, this organization has a strategic planning committee without strategic planning because there's nothing implemented and there's no way for us to work together. When we actually present these issues to the agencies and the nonprofits that are directly supporting the crimes done through the government, the ICH committee director, Teresa Celia, supported the agencies and nonprofits by telling them our leaders, such as yourselves, are going along with what they do so that the people don't feel like they need to change. The things that you have said, that you spoke about in these two acts that you're bringing forth, these are the things that we speak to the committees and the agencies about that are ignored. You guys put together well presented things, but the opposite is being done. We're in severe need of you guys to really look at the fact that you're denying our human rights, and by your partnerships and collaborations with so many people through our communities and families, it denies us the right to actually stand for our human rights. So people like myself is getting wiped out, and there's no accountability or responsibility for any of the crimes that's done to us, including the molestation and soliciting of our children. These inadequate operations and plans that are set forth, they're actually assisting and harming us. And we are not allowed to assist in helping you guys to do better, because you have all of these highly qualified people that do not have education. I would really like the committee to look at the proposal that I put together for technology and business support, and how that can be done through different methods that the government has already established. I thank the committee for their time today.
Thank you very much for your testimony as well. And now we will turn to Mr. Kofi Onyema, who is representing the AFGE union. Welcome. You're on.
Dear Chairperson Bonds and esteemed committee members, my name is Dr. Kofi Onyema. I am the first Vice President of AFGE Local 2725 and the Chair of Organizing and Policy Committee. I hope this testimony finds the committee in good health and high spirits. I am appearing before you today as a concerned member of labor and the DC community, and a passionate advocate for the benefits of flexible work models for both organized labor as well as the general public. I am requesting support from this committee in championing legislation that provides for a more flexible workplace models for DC workers. In the next few minutes, I will highlight numerous advantages of telework and the value addition to the community, an effort to compel this committee to advance legislation to mandate more flexible telework options for district government employees. As you may be aware, the recent decision to reduce telework for DC government employees from 2 days to 1 day per week, which began on March 10th, 2024, raised anxiety levels among employees and their representatives. AFGE Local 2725, along with many other labor organizations, firmly believe that maintaining an expanded telework schedule was a fair balance and was crucial to the safety, well-being, sustainability, and productivity of our members and the public interest alike. Telework offers numerous benefits for both employees and the general public. It promotes safety by minimizing exposure to potential health risks, especially during times of public health crisis and rising crime rates. Telework also reduces usage of government resources, whereby reducing the taxpayer burden. Expanded telework support reductions in emergency response times and reduces the strain on emergency services, thereby enhancing public safety. Reduction in emergency service response times is directly correlated with lowering crime and improving efficiency for fire and EMS services, as it enables quicker incident response and more efficient resource allocation. In a 2022 Forbes article, Dr. Brian Robinson noted that remote work increased worker happiness by 20%. Robinson surveyed over 12,000 employees from a diverse global demographic. He found that millennials are happiest when working remotely, and employee happiness decreases as commute times increase. Reducing telework options contradicts efforts to recruit and retain young talent, leading to current employees being overburdened due to prevalent vacancies. Telework has a positive environmental impact as well, reducing traffic congestion and carbon emissions, contributing to greener and more sustainable DC. Flexible work model supports key policies such as Vision Zero DC, aimed at drastically reducing traffic accidents, and the Clean Energy DC initiative, which seeks to reduce DC's greenhouse gas emissions by 56% by year 2032. Conversely, the recent reduction in telework runs counter to individual transportation budgets of all government employees. By reducing telework, Overnight, employees experienced an increased reliance on public transportation, translating directly into higher commuter costs in addition to an increased strain on local transportation systems. This not only impacts the financial resources of the government and its partners, but also hampers the progress towards a more sustainable and environmentally friendly transportation system. Employees who use various other methods to commute endured higher fuel costs, parking fees, more tolls, and general maintenance to their preferred commute vehicle. It is important to note that environmental negligence and disregard to household finances harms us all, especially the most marginalized members of our community. By reducing telework, we risk exacerbating the negative impacts of transportation on the environment, public health, and overall well-being of our visitors and residents. This goes against principles of inclusion, equity, and social justice that we strive to uphold in our city. Flexible workplace models such as telework and hybrid work models offer numerous benefits for members of the ADA community and employees who are neurodivergent. These models provide individuals with disabilities the opportunity to work in environments that are conducive to their specific needs, allowing for greater flexibility in managing their work-life balance. For employees who are neurodivergent, remote work can reduce sensory overload and provide a more comfortable, accommodating setting, leading to increased productivity and job satisfaction. By embracing flexible work models, organizations can create inclusive and supportive environments that enable all employees to thrive and contribute to their unique talents to the workforce. Opponents of telework raise legitimate concerns about potential decrease in tax revenue, economic contributions due to fewer people commuting and spending money in the city. They argue that reduced traffic can negatively impact local businesses, decrease sales tax revenue, and lower overall economic activity, which can in turn affect the city's ability to fund public services and maintain infrastructure. While these concerns are valid, it is crucial to strike a healthy balance that attracts the best talent and enhances the quality of life for the workforce. By implementing a well-thought-out telework policy, we can support economic vitality through hybrid models that maintains a robust local economy while also reaping the benefits of increased productivity, improved work-life balance, and more sustainable urban environment. Difficult decisions are inevitable when implementing new systems. However, persisting in a framework that prioritizes financial gain over public welfare and jeopardizes environmental sustainability for future generations would be imprudent. I kindly request your support in advocating for the benefits of telework and urging the committee of the whole to support this legislation. Your public endorsement and vocal support will carry significant weight in highlighting the importance of telework for the well-being and inclusivity of DC employees, government operations, and the environment and overall community. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to testify on this matter, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Well, thank you very much for your testimony as well. And we also have another public witness that was able to join us, Mr. Warner Sessions. Mr. Sessions, you can begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Councilmember Bonds. Good morning to you and to your very capable staff. Thank you for inviting me to testify today. My name is Warner Sessions. I appreciate the opportunity to talk today about Bill 25-0782, the Work Models Task Force Amendment Act of 2024. I am testifying today in my personal capacity through the lens of someone who has practiced law in the District of Columbia for over 30 years, and who has been very active over that time in the political, educational, and policy affairs of the district, including as a current trustee of the University of District of Columbia, which I would like to touch upon in my testimony. As you accurately described in your introduction of the bill, the past few years have highlighted the need for flexibility and innovation in our work models. The COVID-19 pandemic forced many businesses and employees to quickly adapt to remote work, revealing both the challenges and opportunities inherent in non-traditional work arrangements. As we move forward, it is critical that we take a proactive approach to understanding and shaping the future of work in the District of Columbia. The importance of the task force. The establishment of the Work Models Task Force is a critical step in this direction. By bringing together a diverse group of stakeholders, including employers, employees, labor representatives, and experts in workplace trends, the task force can provide valuable insights and recommendations on best practices for various work models. These include remote work, hybrid arrangements, and flexible scheduling. In composing the task force, I would recommend that you consider including a faculty expert from UDC's School of Business and Public Policy as a member of the task force, or to serve in an advisory role to assist with conducting research and developing the report. This UDC person would provide valuable expertise on employment trends and industry best practices. I should note here that UDC's business school is accredited by the Association of Advanced Collegiate Schools of Business, an internationally recognized nonprofit organization that independently reviews business schools across the globe. In addition, please consider a UDC administrative or staff representative for addition to the task force. Supporting workforce diversity and inclusion. Flexible work models have the potential to support greater diversity and inclusion in the workforce. They can help remove barriers for individuals with disabilities, caregivers, and those with long commutes, among others. By allowing more people to participate in the workforce, we can enhance the talent pool and drive innovation and productivity in our local economy. Economic and environmental benefits. Adopting flexible work models can also yield significant economic and environmental benefits. Reducing commuting can lower transportation costs for employees and decrease traffic congestion pollution in the district. Businesses may benefit from lower overhead costs associated with office space and utilities, which can be reinvested in employee development and other critical areas. Challenges and considerations. However, it is important to acknowledge and address the challenges associated with these new work models. Issues such as data security, employee monitoring, work-life balance, and ensuring equitable access to technology must be carefully examined. The task force will play a crucial role in identifying these challenges and proposing balanced solutions that protect the interests of both employers, and employees. Let me just mention here UDC's Historically Black College and University Apprenticeship Program. I think it's relevant. Last fall, Mayor Bowser initiated the HBCU Apprenticeship Program with the Department of Employment Services being the lead agency. Along with DEOS, 5 district agencies will supply 5 career service positions each. The program will begin next month in June. The goals of the bold new program are, among other things, 1, to attract and retain talented undergraduate seniors from Howard University and UDC to work in district government. 2, to create a pipeline, highly talented and educated individuals. And 3, establish the district government is one of the most desired places to work. To that end, the work of the task force in defining workplace models will enhance and enable those goals. In conclusion, the Workforce Model Task Force Amendment Act of 2024 represents a forward-thinking approach to addressing the evolving nature of work. By studying and recommending best practices, flexible work models, the task force can help ensure that the District of Columbia remains a leader in workforce innovation, supporting a diverse, inclusive, and dynamic workforce. I strongly urge the committee to support this bill and look forward to the positive impact it will have on our community. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And let me just add real quickly, as it relates to the other bill, I just have one recommendation, that bill being B25-0615, the Wellness and Health Optimization Lively Existence Amendment Act of 2023. My recommendation is simply to consider experts from UDC's Division of Social and Behavioral Science to assist with collecting and analyzing the data for the required annual report.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And thanks to all of our public witnesses. I wanted to, and I will talk with you now, Mr. Sessions, about, if we can, let's talk a little bit about the whole, or the Wellness, Health, Optimized, Lively Existence Amendment Act. Thank you for the recommendation. And if we are able to get this legislation through, we will definitely make sure that that's a part of our recommendation as well. But you heard some of the comments that we've already received. And we have another witness, Ms. Van Throw, who I believe will talk to us a little more about some of the things that she has experienced. We understand that mental health illnesses and trying to get attention when it may just be something exhibited within the workplace doesn't always give us the signs that we need, like when you fall down or you maybe injure yourself in some way with heavy equipment. That's something that we all can see and understand, but it's very difficult sometimes to understand someone's nervousness, their pervasiveness towards being close to other people, or any of those things that can ultimately lead to individuals not feeling mentally well. And so just wondered, from your many years of experience in the, I call it the marketplace of the District of Columbia, what have you encountered that you can share with us that would help us to understand some of the disorders that we may see every day, and what would be your thoughts about what would be some of the solutions that could be applied?
Thank you for that question. As you correctly pointed out, mental health disorders oftentimes don't leave fingerprints. So you don't know it because you can't see it always. So I think educating. As you well know, Councilmember Bonds, my generation, and even in particular my parents' generation, there was always a stigma in the Black community about seeking mental health. I mean, that was just, you didn't do that. You were considered crazy if you did it. And fortunately, that stigma is beginning to change. I was at a summit a couple of months ago. It was a Black alumni summit from my university that I attended, and there was a lot of focus on mental health. I learned about a link called Black, which is just incredible. I went online and found all these African-American women who provide mental health to a whole wide range of individuals across the country. So I think the first step is breaking the stigma. It's still out there. But the more we talk about it, and fortunately, I'm starting to see even commercials on TV about seeking mental health and using people with celebrity who have a platform, who can talk about. I remember the former swimmer, Olympic gold medalist, who talked about, if you're hurting and something's going on, seek help. I also would like to give a shout out to our new director of health, Ayanna Bennett, who happens to also be a Stanford alum, and I met her through that alumni association. She's terrific. And I think the more sort of public service announcements, the more outreach we can do, the more engagement we can do in our community, I think it goes a long way to seeking and achieving a solution.
Thank you for that comment. Ms. Van Throw, would you like to add or speak on that point? I know your testimony was very informative of some of the things that you have seen. I believe you're still with us. There you are.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Barnes. I will speak to my personal experience in my workplace and similar workplaces from previous jobs. That, like I said in my testimony, it's a top-down, bottom-up approach that will work, not one or the other, where the culture of the workforce, I think, needs to systemically change, which is a tall order for a lot of places. But I I think I've found that if someone who is already experiencing mental health challenges is going to work and then, you know, be bearing the brunt of a toxic work environment, it can sort of drastically accelerate their crisis or would be crisis and bring them to a even darker place. I think in my experience, people are so busy at work that, you know, it's not that they don't care about their colleagues with mental health issues, but they don't quite have the time to have that conversation, whether it's people on your team or your supervisor or whoever. I don't have the answers on how to fix these things other than what the previous testifier was saying of the more we talk about it, and I've said this for suicide prevention specifically as well, the more we talk about it, the lower the risk becomes. And so really driving home that it is a safe place to talk about mental health challenges you're having. I think there is a stigma, obviously, and I'm lucky in my generation to be seeing the transition. I did grow up in a household where there was a mental health stigma, but you know, I see due to the pandemic and the changing of times and the younger generation breaking that down, luckily for our future society. And sorry, I'm trying to get my thoughts together. PSA is very important. Really following what they're saying with action is also very important, and offering the space to talk about it more at work. I've had conversations myself where I've brought up my own mental health struggles in relation to the grief I experienced from my partner's suicide at work, and it was met with secrecy in terms of reporting for reviews and things like that. I was actually told that it would likely work against me if I shared that in relativity to my performance. So, you know, I think those kinds of things need to stop. That kind of attitude needs to stop. And again, the more we talk about it, the closer we'll be to accepting mental health as a part of your physiology, because the brain is an organ like any other. Sorry.
I certainly appreciate your follow-up comments because I think we are at a point in our society finally where we understand it's the whole body that is subject to, and we want good health for the whole body, and that the brain, the mind, the thoughts, and the emotions are a part of the entire system. So I appreciate that comment that you just shared with us. You mentioned workplace experience where top down, bottom up. Can you help me understand that a little more precisely? Because we are talking about a workplace. The district government employs some 34,000 individuals. We're in many different buildings throughout the downtown district area and over in Anacostia. So having an understanding of what that might mean for all of our employees when we talk about top down, bottom up. Give me some examples so that I will be clear. And also, Mr. Coffey, we'll ask you to join in since you represent a very important union in the district.
So I'll just say with my previous example of, you know, my own conversations I'd had in my office, in my workplace, we can implement initiatives from the top down. We can create policies from the top down and make sure that those are followed through. Bottom up, in my opinion and experience, really comes from making sure there's communication, making sure people feel safe to communicate with their hierarchy and with their leadership, and all, and that communication needs to be sustained all the way up the chain to the people making those policy decisions for implementation of new mental health initiatives. Without reporting on how the people you're working closest to and the people working under you are doing, I think, you know, it breaks down. That's what I mean by top down and bottom up. You know, there has to be as much of a willpower, political will to increase mental health awareness and create a safe work culture and environment as there is from the top, who are making the broad sweeping announcements and stating, you know, what the position of your workplace might be, but it doesn't matter what the position of your workplace is unless that's followed through with action at the ground level as well. I hope that helps.
Yes, yes, it does indeed. Mr. Omar?
Onuma, thank you.
Yes.
Just to add to Mr. Sessions' piece, I also grew up in a community where mental health conditions were taboo. And oftentimes we were told to just pray it away. While I do have a strong faith, I do believe that we can walk and chew gum, and it is incumbent upon society as a whole to do all that they can to support the people who run the community, who drive the society. And specifically, speaking of DC government, many of us employees are afraid. Going into the pandemic, many of us were stressed. A lot of people were dealing with financial issues, family issues, their own personal health. And when that pandemic hit, a lot of those situations were magnified. As people begin to settle in, some of us, not all of us, to a telework posture, what we found was there was moments in the day where you could find some peace. And it was something that was received very well. It wasn't all day. I do believe strongly that some people, in certain cases, abused, but I would say by and large, many people worked extremely hard. We're talking mornings starting at 7 a.m. and not ending until 9 p.m. when we were delivering vaccines to different pharmacies. There was levels of stress within our government employee circuit that I don't think people experienced in many places and people really understood or took time to learn about. And we're still recovering from that. To add to Mr. Sessions, yes, we do need to educate, but we also need to act. To add to Ms. Van Thorp's piece, we have to lean into this and understand that I would say managers in certain situations are also struggling, but because they're in a position of authority, they don't often know how their authority translates to the mental health of the people that they are meant to manage. And just one thing like a quick conversation can send a person into a very anxious place. An email that has a veiled threat attached to it can really harm the psyche of the employee. And I'll add and finish here, telework helped so much because the tendency when you're in the office is to just work. I don't know, maybe I have a lot of upbringing where I just lean into my work, but when I find that I'm working in a remote location, I intentionally set breaks. You know, quick, I take my 15-minute break. I will take my 30-minute break. I will take a lunch. I will make sure that I am checking in with myself. And I also found that my productivity was higher too, because I didn't deal with the commotion going on down the hall at my office. Many of the interruptions that I receive, the commute, which is now for me about 35 minutes at my new location. And then being a union representative, so many people come and disclose similar situations. So I will use myself and share as a guinea pig all of these struggles that we deal with, these things that we're trying to manage and navigate through, it would be extremely helpful if this task force could identify ways in which we could address it and compel the whole committee, as well as the mayor, to actually give back more telework and to support the mental health piece by things that maybe would be identified through this bill.
Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Please go ahead.
If I may, I really appreciate how much our testimonies are aligned. And the importance of this task force, as Dr. Kofi has pointed out, I think is really assessing and determining that one size does not fit all. Depending on what you do and where you do it, how close you live to work, how long you can be, all those things have to be factored in. By contrast, I am to use myself as a personal example, I go to the office every day and I will work as long as it takes to get the job done. But when I cross the threshold in my house, it's done. No emails, no phone checking, it's done. I'm just done because I need that separation to know that when I'm home, I'm not working anymore. So, you know, one size doesn't fit all. We have to look at the anatomy of the workplace and determine what people are doing when, and there are all the economic factors that both of us talked about, getting people back downtown, contributing to the local economy. All those things matter. How do we strike the right balance? So this task force is crucially important to try to achieve the right balance for all persons in the district and also in the interests of the District of Columbia.
I really thank you for that closing comment, because that is really the purpose of creating a task force, understanding that there's so many variables, and how do we put the variables together in order to make a package that can move our government forward. And when we think about mental health, it is apparent the stigma is slowly can erode away. And that's good news, I believe. And so I'm hoping that this is a new day, of course, across our nation, but definitely here in the District of Columbia. And with such a large workforce, this is a great opportunity for us to make it work, and to create some very positive meaning in our community as a whole. So I appreciate hearing, I guess I'm hearing the blend of the two from you, Mr. Sessions, and also from you, Mr. Onuma. So thank you very much for that. Oh, all right. Ms. Von Cleef, would you please add your comment? I see that you are still with us. Go right ahead.
I am. I actually, so I just want to speak to 3 points that were brought up by my fellow testifiers. One, I take full advantage of telework, which allowed me to be here today for this full amount of time. And it is how I get my work done. I am one of those people who is just, I have ADHD and I am distracted by the conversation. I get less work done in the office than at home. I will throw out a crazy idea and say that yes, it needs to be a blend, absolutely. But the argument that people need to come back downtown to contribute to the local economy, are we going to make that argument for the rest of forever? We are changing as a society. These are changing times. We can walk and chew gum, as was stated, and there are new ways to find additional revenue that accommodate these new norms. And I think that's absolutely true. I know it means new policies. I know it means more time, but that's what we're all here for. We don't need to be stuck in the previous way of the economy. And maybe that's naive to say, as I'm not an economist, but this is just my my very candid thoughts from hearing it in my own workplace. And then I just wanted to say, in terms of managers not knowing how to have those conversations, in my experience, and this might be thinking too far ahead, it is the discomfort. They don't know how to bring it up. Many people have said to me, I wanted to say something, but I didn't know what to say. So I said nothing. And, excuse me. And nothing is the worst thing you can say. What is mentionable is manageable. And even if you go to your employee and say, I've noticed a change, or I'm noticing something, I want to acknowledge it. And this is your space. Or even if you go and say, I don't know what to say, but I want to say something. You don't have to have the right words. It's really just the fact that they know they're not alone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much for your comments. All right. Ms. Carroll, are you still with us? Great. We'd like to.
Yes, ma'am, I'm here. I'm sorry, I'm bouncing in between meetings.
All right.
I apologize. Ma'am, is it okay if I comment about our technology and our business operations at this moment, based on what I've been listening to?
Yes, most definitely. Please go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. The United States of America is one of the most protected countries. We do a very good job at the top in protecting our country. It's not that often in my lifetime or even before I was born that we can say that our country has been attacked. These incidents that do happen are very rare and few. The reason why that is because at the top, our executive offices are very adequate in the technology and business methods that they implement. And the way that these things are set up at the top, it does prevent us from being harmed. These methods that we need at the bottom are denied to the people because the people that are aligned with our agencies, ma'am, and in the nonprofit leadership and advocates, the mentality of traditional ways is bred into the people so that they believe that their inadequacy is a way of helping, and it's not. These things are not very difficult. If we implemented Six Sigma, lean strategies, we would be able to improve because we would deal with direct issues. And by doing so and implementing this through technology and business, we would have data that actually provides adequate information. But the things that we should be looking at, like we're dealing with the symptoms here. We're not dealing with the economic instability that is crippling the people that is continuing these cycles. We're not dealing with human rights being denied and people being harmed by the agencies. There's no accountability or responsibility. None of these things are implemented within the agencies. They're actually removed all responsibility and accountability so that our agencies can do anything to us. These agencies, ma'am, are our families and communities. And for many of us who are Black, all we know is Black people harming us. So we hate ourselves and we hate our people. So what you see are the symptoms of what's happening to us in our communities. When you see the increase in crime, when you see the increase in mental health, when you see the increase in poverty and oppression, these are the symptoms of systematic issues that are not being dealt with, such as racism, hatred, discrimination, inequality. None of these things are being implemented through the agencies. They're only being spoken about and promoted. And I fight hard for us to really look at why we're not dealing with root issues that are causing these problems and why we are looking at the symptoms of the problem and not dealing with root issues. It's very important to deal with the root issues. If more people were safe and that's at the bottom and they weren't under direct and didn't feel like they were under direct attack and no one cared about them, because in dealing with this system, ma'am, nobody cares about us. So this right here, most of our people give up. They're just surviving. They're not living. And The only way to be able to deal with this is to show something different. And that means we have to do something different. This will require us as people to look at who we really are and what we are really giving to our families and communities. And I do believe that our agencies can implement these things by working through the council and working up as well. It's from the top to the bottom, because without the top supporting these resources for these things and supporting the people that's in place to do these things, ma'am, they wouldn't happen. It's very hard for us to actually have any legal standing for our human rights as poor people. We really don't matter. It's a lot of nice things that all of you good people say, but actually living this is what's happening to us. And I really believe that we should look at the core issues: economic instability and a system that's built in racial hatred that continues discrimination, inequality, and all of these things. Those things need to be implemented in a plan like Lean Six Sigma, Black Belt, or something through our agencies to start correcting these things. The reason why I bring up Lean first is because it's a quick, easy method that can be used in our agencies now. Six Sigma can be used at the top to broaden a horizon, to protect, to ensure that improvement in quality is placed throughout all of the agencies over time, which will require more resources and more finances, more. That's a bigger plan. But for short-time things, we really should consider the fact that the people are denied their human rights, and the alignment of our agencies does not allow us to stand for our human rights. I really hope that the council will look at that.
All right, thank you, Ms. Carroll. I am trying to make sure that I have your comments included on this particular issue. And what I'm trying to understand is, when you mentioned, you started by talking about the executive offices are they are adequate at the top, but denied at the bottom, where the people are. I'm trying to, are you speaking of the ICH that you participate on? Or are you speaking of as a government, DC government employee, or just a member of the public? Just trying to understand your.
Yes, ma'am. When I was speaking about our executive offices, what I was using as an example were our executive office, such as the council and above, are very effective and efficient in their jobs and being able to make sure that the country is protected. But the people in the country at the bottom don't have that same protection, ma'am. That's what I was using as an example, because our government actually implement the systems that I'm talking to you about. They actually implement these at the top to protect our country through our military and other agencies that oversee us. So it's not that we don't have the resources, it's that we're not utilizing the resources the right way at the bottom. I apologize for
All
the
right, no apology necessary. I just wanted to make sure that I have a clear understanding of what you were speaking of. Of course, you know that the Council of the District of Columbia has very little to actually say, and even less to do to keep our country safe. We're concerned with, of course, keeping DC safe, the people of the District of Columbia. So I just wanted to make sure that I understood what we were speaking of, and I appreciate getting your testimony. Thank you very much. So this concludes our discussion with our public witnesses. If anyone wants to make a closing comment, I think these are subject matters that are very, very germane to where we're trying to go into the future. So if you have some closing comments, I'm happy. Thank you.
Brief comment to add to, and I don't want to mansplain here, but to some of our other people that have testified, we spoke a little bit about how health insurance sometimes can be problematic to navigate. And of course, if you are economically challenged, you're probably not going to have the resources to go and get mental health services. And oftentimes, some of those services aren't even covered or in network. People oftentimes have to go into their regular finances to pay for their mental health or cognitive behavioral therapy. So that presents a problem. Oftentimes, the economic burden can bleed into other areas of your life. And as a pharmacist, I know firsthand how many patients have come to pharmacies and have had to make a choice between getting their antidepressant drug or getting eggs and bread for their family to eat. And that is heartbreaking. And that is something that we can actually do more to make our city safer. And I'll just add too, we are in DC. And while the council covers DC, the work that DC government employees do cover everyone in the city. And that includes our military, our executive branch, our Congress. We picked up trash. We continue to pick up their trash. We, take care of people in many different places, even in pharmacy. So let's not sell ourselves short on this topic because we cover a lot more than we give ourselves credit for.
Well said. The District of Columbia is vital to this nation and probably to this world because we also have many of the embassies representing countries across this world, and they do depend on us. Even if they call us to say, the fence on the left side of my property is falling, how do I get it repaired? Even little things like that. We are one big family here in the District of Columbia. And of course, we do impact those who live in the surrounding jurisdictions. So thank you for that comment. Thank you very much. Thank you all again for your testimony today. We will now hear from our government witness, Director Charles Hall, and we'll swear you in. And if you want to bring your team, that's fine too. All right. And if you raise your right hand, we'll swear you in. Do you swear and affirm that your testimony and any statements that you make before us today to be truthful and complete?
Yes.
Thank you very much. And thank you for being here. And you can begin when you're ready.
Good morning, Chairperson Bonds, members and staff of the Committee on Executive Administration and Labor. My name is Charles Hall, and I serve as the Director of the DC Department of Human Resources. I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify on Bill 25-0615, the Whole Amendment Act of 2023, and Bill 25-0782, the Work Models Task Force Amendment Act of 2024. I will begin my testimony by discussing the whole act. In May of each year, employers, including the district government, recognize Mental Health Awareness Month to spotlight the importance of mental health and the connection it has to the employee's well-being and workplace productivity. Based on a recent study conducted by the Society for Human Resources Management, or SHRM, half of employees surveyed report feeling used up, and 40% report a decline in mental health once they became managers. In addition, half of all employees surveyed stated that they did not feel comfortable using the mental health resources provided by their employer, and only 42% feel comfortable discussing mental health at work. In addition to workplace stress, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, more than 1 in 5 adults live with a mental illness, and about 1 in 25 in US adults live with a serious mental illness like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and major depression. Similarly, in the DC Department of Health's 2020 Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System report, DC Health found that 14.5% of adults in the district reported experiencing 14 or more days where their mental health was not good. This data provides important context to the WHOLE Act. The WHOLE Act requires employee mental wellness initiatives, including 1, a mental health hotline for all employees to access, 2, at least one mental health practitioner within each deputy mayor cluster to be shared with each cluster, and 3, outreach to employees to ensure that they are aware of mental health initiatives. This bill also requires data collection on the employee use of mental wellness initiatives and submission of a report to council that outlines the use of mental wellness initiatives and recommends improvements to mental wellness resources provided to employees. DCHR applauds Councilmember Bond's effort to spotlight the importance of employees' mental health. However, DCHR does not believe legislation on this topic is necessary, as DCHR and the district already offer robust mental health resources for employees. The district provides all employees with 24/7 access to an Employee Assistance Program, or EAP, through ANOVA. The EAP program aids employees and provides help for a variety of topics, and these topics are not exclusively limited to family or work challenges. Through this service, employees and all members of their household have access to a confidential 24/7 hotline for individual counseling on mental health services, financial and work-life referral services as well. In the realm of mental health, ANOVA's counseling covers substantive and critical topics such as stress, anxiety, and depression, substance abuse, relationship, marital conflicts, as well as grief and loss. For financial counseling, employees can speak with a financial planner about getting out of debt, retirement, estate planning, and even have their tax questions answered. The EAP program provides free legal consultations that can directly address potential stressors an employee may be facing in regard to divorce and family law, debt and bankruptcy, real estate, civil and criminal law, as well as wills and trusts. The EAP program also has work-life consults that can help an employee assess their needs, pinpoint accurate resources, and locate their resources for employees. Resources such as childcare, elder care, education, and finally, resources that can help with family and work challenges. Not only do we have a robust employee assistance program, the district government's leave policies actively encourage and protect employees who use these services. Our rules require agencies to grant employees up to 2 hours of administrative leave to attend an initial appointment with EAP. Agencies may also grant employees up to 8 hours of additional administrative leave per year for employees to take advantage of EAP and wellness offerings. In addition, each employee receives 5 free individual counseling sessions per issue, and the EAP provider partners with the district's health insurance providers to ensure a seamless transition for continued mental health services under the employee's respective healthcare provider. To evaluate EAP and our own wellness offerings using a data-driven approach, DCHR monitors the use of EAP and collaborates with the provider to adjust employee outreach and training based on trends and common concerns. In calendar year 2023 alone, 1,073 EAP counseling cases were held, representing a 7.62% increase from calendar year 2022. In addition to the services provided by EAP, each of the district government's health insurers provide extensive mental health support as they appreciate the close relationship between mental and physical health. Many of our healthcare providers have dedicated 24/7 support phone lines that provide general mental health support, as well as suicide and crisis prevention hotlines. The providers collect and share aggregated data regarding behavioral health visits and claims, both of which increased in calendar year 2023. In calendar year 2023, the providers listed the most prevalent diagnosis categories as severe stress and adjustment disorders, anxiety disorders, depression disorders, and alcohol or opioid disorders. In calendar year 2022, the district's 4 health providers paid claims for over 60,000 mental health sessions. Health providers are also adjusting their strategies to ensure that employees can easily assess needed mental health resources. These strategies include virtual access to mental health providers, appointment scheduling via an app, dedicated mental health and wellness web pages, and comprehensive wraparound services. As with any program, communication is key to the success of the district's mental health initiatives and services. DCHR communicates monthly with all employees about wellness opportunities available to them, including mental health resources via an email newsletter. In recognition of Mental Health Awareness Month, this month's newsletter highlighted Mindful Mondays that included guided meditations, and Mental Wellness Tuesdays, which included sessions on topics including breaking the stigma, exploring mental health treatment options, therapy and beyond, and suicide awareness and prevention. In addition, the newsletter provided resources on supporting Black, Indigenous, and people of color and senior adult mental health. In previous newsletters, DCHR shared information on webinars and resources related to mental health in the LGBTQ community, stress in the workplace, understanding adolescent mental health, healing from trauma and community violence, women's health in the workplace, and healing from trauma in the Black community. Information about mental health resources is also shared with employees via agency-specific wellness leaders. Each agency, under the mayor's personnel authority, designates a wellness leader who acts as a liaison between DCHR's wellness program and their agency. Agency wellness leaders serve a critical role as they understand the needs of their agency's employees and can tailor wellness programs specific to those needs. For example, through our DCHR wellness partnerships last May, the agency wellness leader at the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development hosted a successful virtual mental health awareness lunch and learn entitled Mental Health, Recognize and Respond, a session for employees. They're repeating this event again this year. Similarly, the agency wellness leader at the Department of Motor Vehicles hosted a 4-part mental health talk series for their employees, which included topics in mental, emotional, physical, and financial health. In addition, many of the wellness leaders completed mental health first aid training offered by DCHR in partnership with Kaiser Permanente, a program developed by the National Council of Mental Wellbeing. This 6-hour certificate training empowers participants to understand the symptoms and triggers of mental health distress within the workplace and how they can assist employees experiencing a mental health crisis. Agency wellness leaders, along with other agency HR staff, serve as DCHR's ears and eyes within each agency, and they collectively meet every month to share best practices, collaborate on upcoming events, and discuss trends. The information gathered helps DCHR plan district-wide events that reflect the needs of our employees. As described above, employees currently have 24/7 access to comprehensive mental health resources via the EAP, healthcare providers, and agency-specific wellness leaders. To augment the services available via DCHR, employees who are district residents also have access to the Department of Behavioral Health's Access Helpline that can be reached at 1-888-7-WE-HELP or 1-888-793-4357. The Access Hotline is a 24/7 telephone line staffed by behavioral health professionals who can refer a caller for immediate help or ongoing care. They can also activate a mobile crisis team for those who are unable to travel to receive behavioral health services. With the wide availability of resources employees have, DCHR does not believe an additional mental health hotline as outlined in the WHOLE Act is needed. Similarly, DCHR does not believe assigning a health mental professional to each cluster is necessary. As previously mentioned, Many employees may not feel comfortable discussing their mental health at work. Although mental health professionals must maintain confidentiality, some employees may be uncomfortable seeing someone with whom they've discussed their mental health in a common setting such as a lunchroom or the hallway. By providing direct mental health services, the district may incur potential liabilities as well, which are currently limited as mental health services are provided by vendors. Furthermore, the services offered by EAP and health providers include robust coverage. Both the EAP and health providers track the usage of mental health resources and provide aggregated data to DCHR quarterly. And DCHR welcomes meeting with the council on an annual basis to share and discuss this data. DCHR does agree that additional outreach to educate employees on mental health resources available to them is always beneficial. And we will review our communication channels to determine if additional employee communication on mental health can be shared via text, social media, or other campaigns. Next, I will discuss Bill 25-0782, the Work Models Task Force Amendment Act of 2024. The stated purpose of the bill is to create a task force to evaluate competitive work models for DC employees by opening conversation with experts to determine a way towards a healthy, productive, and competitive workforce in order to have an open and fruitful dialogue regarding the direction that the DC government is taking on return to work models. The task force would be comprised of 2 labor union representatives, 1 representative from DCHR, DGS, the WIC, DOES, and the OCA's office. It would also include 3 members from the community with varying work experience levels, 2 from the real estate community, and 1 from a nonprofit workforce development entity, the chairperson of the council committee over DCHR, and 2 members of the public appointed by that chairperson. The task force work would result in a recommendation by June 30th of 2025. DCHR opposes this legislation as the district has thoroughly researched, clearly outlined, and communicated to employees the district's telework policy. The district government's telework policy is based on months of extensive research and consultation with subject matter experts. The district's current telework policy provides employees with an opportunity to routinely telework 1 day per week. Based on agency operations and employees' duties and responsibilities, employees may be eligible for flexible work schedules that allow a compressed 8 or 9-day work schedule as well. Managers may also consider situational telework to assist employees due to a home repair emergency, an illness or injury, or based on a time-sensitive priority project. DCHR strongly believes the district's policy strikes a balance between providing employees with flexibility while ensuring the best services for residents and a physical presence in the community we serve and support. As government employees, we have a unique calling to serve the residents, visitors, and employees of the District of Columbia. To do this the most effectively, we need to be present in the community, as this allows for optimal levels of collaboration and brainstorming with colleagues, and therefore first-in-class services for residents. In-person interactions often foster creativity and problem-solving, which may be stifled in a remote work environment. Studies suggest in-office time increases workplace collaboration and communication. In a survey of 1,000 business leaders, the most cited benefits of in-office presence were improved communication at 55%, creativity at 50%, productivity at 49%, and improved company culture at 39%. In another survey, participants reported that when they worked in the office, they spent 51% of their time collaborating with coworkers. Physical presence also allows workplace culture and friendships to foster more easily, which can contribute to mental well-being. 95% of Americans say having a friend at work makes them happier. 84% of Americans say that they have a harder time making friends when working remotely. This data is especially important as employees may experience increased anxiety and depression due to loneliness. As district government employees, we serve as an example for large employers in the district and acknowledge that other non-government employers may not understand our unique mission. Our ultimate duty and responsibility is to serve the residents and the visitors of the District of Columbia, to foster vibrant communities, to grow opportunities for people who need them most, and to be more accessible to those we serve. Our current policy acknowledges and reflects this responsibility. The proposed task force includes 3 members from the community with varying work experience levels, 2 from the real estate community, and 1 from a nonprofit workforce development entity. Although DCHR can appreciate the experiences that these individuals can bring to their workplaces, they may not be equipped to understand the operations of district government agencies. DCHR conducted thorough research and spoke with many surrounding local government jurisdictions before updating its telework policy. As HR professionals and subject matter experts, DCHR has a firm understanding of the current and ever-changing labor market within the DMV area. We are consistently in communication with our counterparts in the area, as well as other HR professionals and organizations throughout the country. We do not believe the task force would be best suited to inform the needs of district government work models or needs. I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify on Bill 25-0615, the Whole Amendment Act of 2023, and Bill 25-0782, the Work Model Task Force Amendment Act of 2024. As stated previously, DCHR applauds Chairperson Bonds and the committee for highlighting the importance of employee mental health and workplace flexibility. As the initiatives outlined in the whole act are currently provided to employees, DCHR does not believe the legislation is necessary, but we stand ready to work with the committee to increase our communication about these critical services to employees. DCHR strongly opposes Bill 25-0782, the Work Models Task Force Amendment Act of 2024, as the district government's mission calls for us to be visible, active members of the community who can understand the needs of our constituents by meeting and collaborating with them in person. Our mission is like no other and cannot be clearly understood by those in the private sector. As the district government, it is critical that we not poll the public on the standard, but instead establish the telework policy and work model standard in the district to ensure we serve as a role model for other large district employers. Again, thank you for the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you very much for your testimony. And as always, I do have a few questions. I took the liberty of quickly getting a copy, your most recent copy of your newsletter. And while I agree, it has lots of tidbits of information, tells me many different programs that I can maybe participate in. I guess I was looking for a little more. You explained the substance of your challenge, particularly during Mental Health Month. And this is the May 1. Is that Mental Health Month? May 1, starting
Yes.
May 1?
Yes.
Okay. It's a lot of stuff, lots of good information. But in my opinion, it's not zeroing in on mental health per se. May is mental health, women's health, and National Bike Month. And so I can learn about the Wellbeing Wednesdays. I see a picture of a woman on a bike. I can also see on Thursdays, Run with Fit DC in-person class. And then, of course, the Breaking the Stigma Mental Health, 2 individuals talking. And then there's a big picture of a man on a bike. So I'm not feeling mental health when I look at this, but I am feeling like, wow, my government, if I'm an employee, my government is doing all kinds of stuff, things that I can participate in, which could lead to a sense of well-being, mental well-being. So I appreciate that. You're opposed to, it sounds like you're opposed to both pieces of legislation, one more strongly than the other. I appreciate the fact that you do have a hotline, but you also testified that your hotline can provide me with other kinds of information, certainly beyond the counseling on mental health services. In fact, I believe you indicated that hotline would not be, an additional hotline would not be appropriate because we don't want to practice mental health services. Am I correct? That's kind of how you have indicated to me in the past that, to warn me against proposing anything that would imply to employees that they're going to get direct services through a hotline. Am I correct?
So the hotlines that are available would be direct services to employees. So the
Oh, I see.
EAC, they have their healthcare providers, and then of course the one that's available to DC residents who work in the government, they can use the hotline available to them through DBH. So there are multiple hotlines already available for service.
Well, which hotline do you provide at your office, the Department of Human Resources?
Yes, excellent question. So through our agency, there's the hotline through ANOVA, which is EAP, the Employee Assistance Program. And then we have 4 healthcare providers who each have a 24-hour hotline as well. So there are multiple avenues for persons to access a hotline. Of course, based on your healthcare provider, you would use that respective hotline. All employees have access to the one available through EAP.
All right, so if you are a DC government employee, depending on your health provider, there is a hotline that you can call, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
If you are a part-time employee or a wage, I call it wage board from back in the day, that's what it was called. If you are a waged employee, hourly employee, do you also have access? Are you in an insurance system?
If you elect to be a part of the insurance, yes. And
You
you
can
still would
elect
have
to.
the opportunity to use the EAP hotline as well.
All right. So in other words, any and everyone who works in a position within the District of Columbia government can be a part of a health provider system and therefore have access to the health provider system that would speak to mental health illness.
So active employees, yes, that want to make sure that we don't include
Okay,
like
let's talk then.
volunteers would
Okay.
not be,
All right.
they would not have access to that.
Okay, volunteers, and of course, I guess the summer employment youth program, that's
That-
another
that
kind of
tax
program that doesn't have access.
Right. And usually the youth would be covered under, most likely could be covered under their parents' healthcare insurance.
All right, okay, just want to make sure.
Yes.
So I'm hoping that everyone is listening and they know that if you are in a part-time position in a DC government in any of the offices, you do have the option to sign up for a health provider, and therefore you will have access to mental health services. So let's talk a little bit about the access to mental health services. You heard the public testimony today, questions about the cost, the duration of the services. Can you give us some sort of understanding as to if, as an employee, I call the hotline, what should I expect? Will I be serviced? Do I have to specify some very specific mental health needs in order to get service? Or is it we do an exploration on the phone and then they decide? Are all questions, anxieties, depression, covered under the services that are provided by the, you said the 4 health lines that we have?
Yes. So first, I think an important distinction would be that it sounded like the witnesses we heard from today are not DC government employees. So they would not have access to the same 4 insurance providers in the way that DC government employees do. They may be employed through, covered in insurance through their employer, but it does not sound like they are employed by DC government. So I want to make sure that there's that very important distinction. And so challenges that they may be having would need to be addressed by their employer. DC government employees, so I've used, the telehealth option myself. And typically what happens is you're going to call in the line and you're going to let them know why you're calling in. There's some, foundational information you'll have to provide, your name, those sorts of things, so they can look you up and make sure that you're covered. You're going to provide them with your symptoms, whatever you're dealing with, so that they can assess whether or not you may need to go and see someone physically, or they can provide you with the assistance you need over the phone. As it relates to
Excuse me, are those 4 lines located, is there a representative located in your office? Or when you dial those numbers, do you reach the insurance provider directly?
Good question. So that would be reaching the insurance provider directly.
All right. So Inova, what is that? Because the EAP, I have something that says they provide support and resources, but it doesn't say they provide the actual counseling, mental health counseling.
Yep. Good question. So Inova is the company that provides us with our EAP service. And to reiterate, it's important to remember that even if you don't have one of the 4 healthcare providers, EAP is going to be available to you and to your family for a variety of supports. So not just mental health. It could be marriage counseling. It could be financial counseling.
Right.
It could be legal services that they're going to be available.
And they are located within your office, or you have some say on that, or
they're an
tell us
outside
about it.
vendor that we
So it's a
use.
vendor.
Yes,
We,
ma'am.
we pay someone to do this.
That's right.
A
Yes.
contract. Okay.
Yes,
I
yes.
got you. And are they equipped to evaluate whether or not I need to speak with a mental health counselor?
Yes, ma'am. They have a 98% or higher satisfaction rating at Inova. Additionally, I've worked with EAP, vendors before, and they are very qualified to sort of try to figure out and assess what is needed. And then keep in mind that you'll get 5 counseling sessions initially. If you need more than 5, they will help connect you to someone who will provide you with those additional counseling supports.
And so the fact sheet I have says they provide financial services, legal services, work-life referral services like childcare, elder care, like you mentioned, education information, and they do short-term counseling, and they refer you, as you indicated, for in-person or to at a higher level of counseling. In other words, it tells me I call this number and I can ask about a variety of concerns that I have. But
Yes.
there is no, I just want to establish the fact there is no dedicated phone line that we, the government, maintain that is exclusive to mental health services. Is that correct?
So there's a dedicated phone line through the contracts with the vendors that we have that are available to
Okay,
DC government.
all right.
employees. Yes.
Wanted to make sure. Um, And you mentioned that when you speak with your health provider, there's some basics that we have to have naturally, name, address, your membership number, I would imagine. As it relates, because I'm concerned with mental health wellness, okay? So therefore, are there some words that you have to use to trigger getting the care you need and understanding what the associated costs will be? Excuse me, is it outside of what your monthly premium may be with the insurer?
Excellent question. So, one, I think that it is similar to when we all go to our, annual physical, that it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we are honest with our physician about what we're dealing with. So there aren't necessarily trigger words. You just want to talk about what you've been dealing with, what you've been feeling. Even part of my, annual physical is a mental health assessment where my physician will ask me how I'm feeling mentally. And so that would be what someone would do when they call in. They don't have to use any trigger words or have to sort of self-diagnose. They're going to talk to the person, and that person is qualified to know what questions to ask so that they can get to the root of what someone might be dealing with.
All right, so I finished that. Are there additional costs associated with an employee getting mental health services?
So there is coverage under their healthcare plan if they're using a plan. What's important to remember is just like with our physicians for our, healthcare, if they're outside of the network of providers that are available, there could be an additional cost.
Outside of the network provider. So I call my insurance company by calling this number. I explain what I need, and then the insurance representative will help me determine whether or not I need to go to a specialist, perhaps that's outside of their confines. In other words, not a part of their insurance process.
So they're going to provide you with a listing of available providers. They are going to, and as part of our healthcare plans, it lets us know, like, there's a place where you can look up in-network providers. A lot of it comes down to preference and choice. And so if no different than our dental care provider, that if you use an in-network dentist, then it's covered under your plan and there may not be any additional costs. But if you use someone outside based on a preference, you could incur some additional costs.
Given that we are aware as a government of the different kinds of mental health, wellness categories of, I guess, disabilities, I'll call, that are associated with mental health illnesses. Are all of those that we have talked about today covered by the 4 insurance providers?
You mean the different illnesses?
Yes.
So I'm not aware of any illnesses that would not be covered. I mean, mental health is ever evolving and ever changing. There's a new study that says part of one of the triggers to mental health issues is related to how much you sleep. And so there are, our providers have even done like sleep studies on people, or webinars or sessions on healthy sleeping habits to ensure that those sorts of things are addressed to help people ensure that they can stay on a healthy track. So if you have the issue, I'm not aware of any mental health issue or illness that would not be covered by our provider.
So are you telling me then that when a employee calls, the insurer will be concerned with the hours that they sleep, whether they have peaceful sleep and what have you, and that's the first order of business to determine whether or not they may be a sufferer of mental illness?
They're qualified to do an intake process that they know what questions need to be
I
asked
see.
to sort of get to the point of
Okay.
a diagnosis.
And you probably know too, because you say you collect data on a quarterly basis. So I'm asking, based on what you're collecting, are we all suffering from lack of quality sleep? Is that what's going on in our workforce now? Or are we suffering from something else?
I think it varies because one, we're unique individuals and we have unique circumstances. So we can't generalize what any of us are dealing with or how we got to that place.
And I understand that. But what I'm asking, what do your numbers show? I'm sure it's not, they didn't say, I think you mentioned there were 60,000 mental health sessions
Yes,
that were claims were paid for in 2022. 60,000. I'm not asking about the 60,000 different. I mean, there must be some similarity among some of those, and that's what I'm asking about.
yes.
What does your data tell us?
So we're seeing similarities among stress, anxiety, panic, marital and relationship issues. We are seeing some similarities against bipolar and alcoholism. Those are the major trends that we're seeing from each of the providers.
All right, thank you very much. I think that's important because it kind of, I'm sure that those who are listening are very curious, and I'm sure they can say, I think I kind of see that or feel that or whatever. And that's really important because one of the purposes of this hearing is also to deal with the stigma against mental illness and to accept it. We're talking the whole body health as opposed to, can't talk about the brain.
That's right.
So I appreciate that. So your basic testimony today, I should ask you, can you get us the number of claims that were paid for 2023 and what those categories are? And can we get information from you that gives us the categories, maybe in ranking order of occurrences from the 2022 and the same for the 2023? And if we could get that within 2 weeks, please, that would be great.
Yes,
If
and
you
just to
have
make
it.
sure that I'm clear on the categories. So like we talked about stress,
Yes,
anxiety.
those, whatever the categories may be, they may have 20 different categories. So if they're ranked, that will help us to kind of get a handle on what we're doing sincerely with this issue, mental illness.
Got it. Yes, ma'am.
You also shared with us that each agency has a designated wellness leader. Can you tell us a little bit about the selection of these individuals? How are they selected? Can I just volunteer and say, in my office, I'm going to be the wellness person and I'm the happy person, the ha 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 or whatever. And then the training, you mentioned a little bit about some of the training and certificate training, but give us a sense of the breadth of the training and how frequently training occurs. And then the reporting of from these individuals. Is there any a regular reporting requirement? And if so, the frequency.
Yeah, so there is not a selection process per se as it relates to the wellness champions or leaders. It is primarily voluntary. And it's based on, their professional or their personal experience and their passion for wellness, because we want people who are passionate about wellness to take it back and to ensure that there are consistent wellness opportunities and initiatives in their agencies. They meet on a monthly basis. So there's a coordinated process to ensure that it's both sharing best practices, sharing outcomes of initiatives that have occurred, making sure that there's training, engagement with one of our four healthcare providers that takes place in those meetings as well. And, there is a emphasis in ensuring that even as they are engaging in these initiatives and activities in their agencies, that they are applying them to themselves as well. That they are taking advantage of the wellness opportunities, staying on top of ensuring that they are well and consistently participating in wellness opportunities. As it relates to reporting, when you say reporting, are you saying like reporting specific data from their agency? Can you sort of expand on
Well,
that?
I was just thinking that almost every employee in our system has some reporting requirements, whether it is in orally, in weekly, or some sort of staff meeting, or it might be some quarterly data collection. It's, I hear you when you say that these are volunteers, but they're volunteers, but they're using their workday to perform a task that is beneficial to our government. So how do we account for their time being used in this manner?
So during their monthly meetings, they will share, outcomes, feedback on the initiatives that they have employed in their various agencies. And they're tracked by a wellness coordinator and the healthcare providers who are going to have more access to information because of a confidentiality piece. As employees, again, may not feel comfortable discussing some matters with colleagues. Those are matters that our healthcare providers will be able to provide data.
All right, so they're really coordinated by the insurance providers. Is that what you're telling me?
As far as the data collection, yes, but the
Okay.
wellness leaders really are in place to ensure that because each agency is different, each workforce is different, that they'll be able to tailor wellness initiatives to that workforce that they work with.
Okay, now these wellness leaders, this is in addition to, no, that you said there was one in each agency and they were volunteers, right?
Yes.
So who do they report to, or do they report, or?
Excellent question. So we have a chief wellness officer in DCHR who helps coordinate and lead these wellness leaders who are assigned in agencies.
And is this person equipped with any particular skills? And they are?
Yes, they have a wide-ranging knowledge of wellness initiatives, how to implement them, how to assess them. They also work with our associate director for benefits and retirement. And as a team, they've been doing this for years. Recently, they were awarded by Aetna, which is one of our largest healthcare providers, an award for being superior in our wellness offerings.
Are they with you today?
Yes.
That
Paul Shaw
individual?
is here today.
All right, I see. Okay. So that is, what is his last name?
Shaw.
Mr. Shaw is in fact your chief wellness leader.
He's the associate director for benefits and
That's what
retirement.
I
He
thought.
oversees or
Okay,
manages.
so your
the
chief wellness leader is not here.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. But you do have that filled position within your agency.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes.
if you would send me information on who that person is. Are they psychologists, psychiatrists? Any of that information would be helpful. I'd like to know who that is. And when I called this 24/7 number that is staffed by a behavioral health professional, is that person affiliated with a hospital or just a pudentas somewhere in Oregon that works for the insurance provider?
Just for clarity, are you referring to the hotline managed by DBH?
Yeah, your hotline, yes.
So, so the ones that we offer EAP through Innova, and then the 4 healthcare providers, those are managed by employees of those organizations and companies.
Those companies,
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
But when we call the number that is affiliated with you, is through your contractor, and that's your EAP number, correct?
The EAP, correct. That's the
Okay, so it's
contract vendor.
4 insurance companies and then it's your EAP.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. And the number that's available through DBH
Okay.
for district employees who live in the district.
All right. You mentioned by providing direct mental health services, the district may incur potential liabilities, which are currently limited as mental health services are provided by vendors. Can you help me? What are you telling me in that statement? Are you saying that when you call this EAP number, it's primarily a referral service because the district is concerned about liability and therefore you would prefer, if you have mental health concerns, that you would call your insurance provider?
I think that is a preference. It also removes the anxiety or the fear that someone may have by divulging their health or mental health concerns in the workplace, which right now is not a liability. So there's not, a claim that could be launched by an employee against another employee or their supervisor to say, I disclosed my mental health condition to them and they used it against me. Those sorts of things don't exist at the moment because we're available to outsource those conversations to say, if you're having these issues, if you're, dealing with stress, you're dealing with anxiety, here's the EAP number. Also, don't forget that if you have insurance through one of our healthcare providers, you have access to additional mental health supports as well.
Right.
There's also a confidentiality level that exists because you're speaking directly to someone who is held under HIPAA standards. They're outside of the government, and it helps to shield the government from having that additional avenue for liabilities that could arise.
All right. And so then what we're also learning is that if you are a part-time temporary employee or part-time employee, temporary employee, then it is to your benefit to sign up for a health provider. So
Yes.
are we doing the work of the very powerful health care system in America by recruiting individuals to become members of their plans?
What do you mean by are we doing the work for the?
Well,
for
if
providers?
if I'm a part-time employee and I'm pretty sure that when I sign up, as you indicated, you said all the health plans are available to me. Are we saying that you must be a part of a health plan in order to get appropriate mental health services?
Got it. So no, because you can opt out of any of our healthcare providers and still have access to EAP. Because remember, that's separate and distinct from our healthcare providers.
But EAP is gonna refer me somewhere. Where are they gonna refer me? I don't have money. That's why I didn't sign up for the health plan. So what do I do?
Right. So
Do
remember,
I go to, I can't go into, what is it, Medicaid, because I'm working.
so First, with EAP, remember that there are 5 sessions before there's a referral. So it's not an immediate referral. It's a call in, there's an intake process, and then there's an opportunity for you to engage in 5 sessions before there would be any referral process.
And how do I find these sessions? Because sounds like they must be with legitimate mental health practitioners.
Mhm.
So does EAP have a battery of those individuals that will they charge me?
No, these are 5 free sessions that are available. And keep in mind that they are available for different issues. So you could have 5 for anxiety. You could have 5 for my marital issues. You could have 5 for legal issues. All of those would be separate and distinct and available to you
Okay, but
without being covered under the health
yeah, but
insurance.
but my question right now is I'm calling in because I'm feeling very nervous on my job or something like that. So mine would be clearly mental health, and you're telling me I will have 5 free sessions
Mhm.
to, will I talk to the EAP helpline, or will the EAP refer me in the first discussion that I have to, will it be to a health provider or to a hospital or insurance? What is it?
You're going to get connected to a mental health provider that is part of EAP's network. So they'll connect you to
see.
someone who can assist you
All
with
right.
your, if it's a nervous condition that you're having, they're going to connect
All
you to
right.
someone who will assist you with that.
And so the contract that we have with Innova, it includes the cost of these experts that they may have in these various disciplines?
That's correct.
Okay, all
Yes.
right. Will you please make sure I get a copy of that, if you don't mind,
A copy of,
the contract?
I can see what I can do.
It's, should be public information.
Yeah, I will definitely see what we
All
can do.
right,
Probably working with OCP as OCP,
I
you
understand.
know, works contracts and not
Yes.
ACHR.
Yes. Thank you very much. Then I wanted to, is there anything else you think we need to drill down on as it relates to mental health wellness?
I think that the one place where I would definitely drill down, and you mentioned this at the beginning, was to ensure that there is a consistent sort of reminder of what opportunities are available to employees. So we are looking at our communication strategies and seeing how we can better ensure that there's constant follow-up with people to say, don't forget, this is available to you. So those are one of the things that we're definitely going to continue to do. And to your point, make sure that it's a little bit more clear about what's available to persons.
Thank you very much for that. And I appreciate so much you've shared data in your testimony. That's very helpful. I think it helps us all to understand this is a big bucket of things that are going on, and we are but human.
Right.
Really and truly. So on that, I wanted to ask you, what do you think is the correlation between workplace culture, including sexual harassment, bullying, retaliation, favoritism, as it relates to mental health? I think one of our witnesses actually spoke to feeling a little intimidated in certain situations. So I just wondered if you have any thoughts on that.
I think there can definitely be a correlation between the culture of the workplace and your mental health. That's why, you know, we've got to make sure that, as we've discussed, that managers and employees equally are trained on what does a healthy, empathetic workplace look like, so that persons can understand that it doesn't just impact your performance, it can literally impact your health as well.
So, Director Hall, is this a new dominion for the workplace, this new dominion where we have to think about how, not just what is the task that we have for our employees, but we have to think about how do they get it done? What may be the barriers to getting their work done? And then we go into this whole issue of ratings,
Mhm.
performance evaluations.
Yeah, I don't know that I would say it's new. I think that, the culture in the workplace has always existed. And similarly to when you were talking to witnesses earlier, I think that what we see now is that as a result of the pandemic, we are reassessing what does the workplace look like? What does the workplace require? And how does a post-pandemic work environment look? And so those are things that we are constantly assessing and reassessing. And at DCHR, that we are making sure that not only are we researching and looking into, but then working through how do we implement it to ensure that the district government is not only productive in its service to our employees, but also empathetic and healthy for our employees as well.
All right. And so you have testified that you believe that our DC government has already entertained expert testimony, expert input from individuals that have given us clues and directions on how to proceed with making a healthy workplace into the future. So therefore, there's no need, I'm leading us now into the task force. So there's no need to hear from anyone else that we already know, that we are omnipotent on this subject matter and are very sure that the models that we have put forth are the models that will work.
Yeah, so as you stated earlier, we are definitely all human. So I and my colleagues in DCHR are far from omnipotent, for sure. What I can say also is that we were very diligent in looking into researching, collaborating, and discussing work models, not just internally, but externally. We were discussing them with people in the DMV and even went to the West Coast through conversation to figure out what different governments and entities were doing. I think that when we look at the work model that we put in place, there are a couple of things to note. One, the trend of reducing telework is not unique to DC government. It is a trend that we've seen across the country. There are very few employers who are increasing telework options. And so that's not a unique qualifier here in DC government. Two, I think the work model that we implemented also provided an opportunity for additional flexibility where the work responsibilities and the operational standards of the agency would permit, as we made available a 4-day work week, 4-day, 10-hour work week to employees. That was not in place prior to this most recent telework policy. And so I think that we can't overlook that flexibility was added to the policy where we could see it feasible operationally. I also think that what's important to remember, two things that I would flag is one, while I know that, and we're going to be able to find surveys and reports that can support both sides, undoubtedly, because what's clear is no one really knows which is the best approach. It is a trial and error that we are on right now. What we do know is that DC government is here to serve. And one of the things that we know was highlighted throughout the pandemic, and I think continues now, is that those of us who are in service, it is important for us to be available and accessible, for us to be visible. And we can never forget that there are segments of DC government employees who will never be eligible for a telework option, who have schedules where they must be present at all times. And so we've tried to make sure that there was that balance, keeping in mind that MPD, FEMS, OUC, all of those places may never be eligible for telework. And so the service that we provide has to be top of mind for all of our employees who serve in DC government, and persons who understand that recognize that when I work in a service-oriented career, that being present is probably going to be a requirement. That if I worked solely in a IT sort of capacity, then telework might be something that I could have a greater advantage to do.
Thank you very much for that comment. Can you share with us some of the governments that you looked at in other parts of the country?
Sure. So we reached out to Prince George's County, to Montgomery County. We looked at Maryland and Virginia. I spoke to someone in San Jose and in Denver as well. We also spoke to persons in Philadelphia.
Okay, and so when you were speaking with the persons in Philadelphia, which I mentioned that because that's one of the oldest governments that we have in the United States. So I'd be very curious as to how they are handling this return to work in the marketplace issue. What are they doing? Tell us a little bit what you discovered with them.
Yeah, so similar to us, they're working through what does return to work and maximum service and support look like for the government. They want to make sure that people are accessible. And so it's ever changing. What we've discovered is that there are governments that have a 1 day per week, and there are governments that offer a range, you know, from 1 to potentially a 5-day maximum.
Per week, 5 days in a week?
Yes.
Is that restricted to IT type jobs, or is it everyone?
Yes, excellent question. So there's a list, a classification list of jobs and job duties and responsibilities that actually show who would be eligible for telework and the amount of time they would be eligible for telework.
All right, and so have you gone to that a level of specificity as you look at DC? I mean, remember you told me you've already pulled all the experts, you've got all the expertise, and I'm just trying to understand what do you really have that is informing us of the policies?
Excellent question. So we did have a workforce or work group, excuse me, that came together before implementation, before making a final decision. We had people from different agencies that could talk to us about how this might impact your agency. And making sure that when we actually rolled out the new policy, that there was about 2 months of time to socialize it with agencies. So agency directors, managers, supervisors had adequate time to go back to their staff and sort of talk through, what will this look like for us? How will this impact us? What are your thoughts about this? So that they could prepare for the effective date that was in March. The announcement occurred in January. So there was a 2-month time period. It wasn't like a shift from one day to the next day.
I got it. And so did you also speak to some of the larger private companies? Because they have a lot of employees that they had to be concerned with, including, let's say, WMATA, Amazon,
So I didn't speak with any of them. I did research them, and the team researched them as well. And what we saw was that even in private companies, there's a reduction in telework options. In some, it was as drastic as if you moved outside of The city or the state where our headquarters are, you need to move back or you need to resign, because they knew that those persons weren't going to be able to telework. And so we didn't speak necessarily with private companies. Again, I would emphasize the difference between a private company and the government is that the private company is seeking to make a profit. And so whatever profit model will work best for them is what they are going to implement. The government is not seeking to make a profit. The government is seeking to make sure that we're available to provide the services and meet the needs of the residents and the visitors of the District of Columbia. So it's not always apples to apples when we compare, because there is a different goal in mind for the private sector versus the public sector.
Well, that's a very fair analysis, but I must say, if you were to talk to 10 people on the street, they would say, I do customer service, she does customer service, he does customer service, and we do care about our paycheck. We care about maybe the rudeness of customers. We care about having a set time of service, so we'll know when we start and when we leave. That's what they'll talk about. They will not talk about whether it's a for-profit or public service. I mean, that's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with you. If they're in customer service, though, most likely they're not able to telework. They
All
would
right.
be in person, probably 5 days a week.
So how many unions were included in your decision-making process?
Excellent question. So OLRCB did engage unions when we initially.
Were they on your task group that decided this? Okay.
The OLRCB was a part of the work group, yes. And then had
I'm
discussions with the
talking about the
unions.
actual unions,
Yes.
the AFL, CIO, and SEID. I mean, any of the union leaders within our government, were they there?
Not as part of the internal work group, but
I see.
OLRCB did engage in discussions with them about the
I see.
change. Yes.
Okay. All right. And do you have a report, findings that was generated by this task group that informed you as to, with recommendations as to the policy you put in place today?
So not necessarily a report, but the policy is an outgrowth of what we heard back, the feedback that we gathered from the working group as they went back to their individual agencies and gathered information.
Okay, so you don't have any written reports that would say, you know, okay, here's the issue, here's the assignment, this group take this part of the concern, that group take that, and bring it all back and we'll deliberate on it, and nothing like that.
Not a written report. I think
Okay.
that the discussions that we had in the working group are captured and documented in the policy that was created. Also to keep in mind that everyone on that working group would have had one fundamental unique unifier, and that was that they were all coming from the government perspective.
Yes.
So there was
From representing the agencies.
right.
Yes,
Yes.
okay. All right. Representing not the workforce per se, but the management. We're talking about a management heavy structure.
So I would not say that it was just from a management perspective. There are definitely, and I appreciate the fact that as part of the conversations that we had, there were definitely empathetic managers and directors who talked about how this would impact our workforce. From a DCHR perspective, we were very mindful of the financial impacts that could occur, everything from parking to dependent care. So we made sure that we opened up enrollment so that those persons who would be impacted had an opportunity to enroll or make adjustments to their dependent care. Because now if you're going to have to be at work 4 days instead of 3, and you need to make sure that your child is going to be, under the care and supervision of someone else, we want to make sure that you can make those adjustments to that benefit. If you had discontinued your parking or transit benefit, we wanted to make sure that you had opportunity. And that's why we gave a special length of time so that people could assess where they were, how this would impact them, and then make those changes. So it wasn't just from a management perspective, definitely employees were taken into
All right,
consideration.
and I get it. You're thinking for the average employee, a management thought for the average employee. I hear that. And in thinking, what were your thoughts about the realities of lifestyle in our community today? You heard from some of the public witnesses, questions about, the high cost of parking. Everything's gone up. The cost of food or getting a snack or having lunch. If you're lucky enough to find a place where you could have lunch, if you're, in the office, work, on any particular day. So what were your thoughts about how the cost of living has greatly increased from 2020? 2024, 2025, whole different. What did you think about that? I'm just very curious, since you don't have a written report, all we have is as outcome, the policy.
Yeah, so again, we did take into consideration the transit benefit that is available to persons. So if they had discontinued it, we made sure that they are aware of, here are the steps you need to take to activate a transit benefit. Again, the dependent
And
care
what is
piece.
that benefit now? Is it still?
Paul would have to help me on the specifics about the transit benefit, but
It's 100?
is it 100? Yes, it's 100.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. And does that match what the federal government was giving? I thought they did a little more because they also provided parking in some instances. Or parking or transit benefit, or if you could get us that
I will look
from
into
your
that.
perspective, that would be great. And also, what about how many part-time employees do we have in the district? When I say part-time, those that are not working or scheduled to work a 40-hour work week.
So let me get back to you on that
Okay,
number.
all right, please. And then the number of those that are also WEs. Because I think that's even different. They're only paid. And then maybe the number that are also not to exceed, the 13-month appointments. And you're saying all of those categories are eligible to sign up for a health provider.
So they either would have the opportunity to sign up for the healthcare provider, or they would still have access to services through EAP.
For five sessions. And after that, they're on their own.
There would be a referral. And it would depend, again, I want to make sure that we also keep in mind the services provided through DBH for all DC residents. So that hotline would be available as well.
Into perpetuity. If you're a DC resident, the hotline,
That's right.
DBH hotline.
Is
Did you
available.
give us that number?
Yes, ma'am, I sure will.
All right, thank you.
That number again is 1-888-793-4357.
All right. We've been told that there are some employees that are listening in, so we want to make sure we give them the information.
Got it.
We know how difficult outreach can be, including within the government to the employees. We've talked a little bit about the newsletter, but how do you ensure that information and resources filter to the employee base? And is there any regularity to that, or is it as program managers think of things that would be good or useful, and then your office simply promotes it? I'm just trying to understand, how do we really get information on a regular basis to our employees?
I think that's an excellent question, and one that we are constantly working through. Of course, there's the monthly wellness newsletter from our wellness team, but we also have started conversations about what additional information and ways can we get substantive, useful information to our employees, and then what does the cadence look like? So we have a social media plan now because we know that more people are using social media. So making sure that we utilize the DCHR Facebook and Instagram pages more. Also considering additional updates and notifications that could be sent through the email. We know that people are inundated with emails and don't always read emails. So we're trying to figure out what's the best communication strategy so that, to your point, we can leverage that strategy to ensure that people continue to be informed and aware of what's available to them. We also have access to texting through cell phones. So that's an avenue that we could use as well.
It sounds like you're covering the territory.
We're
So
trying.
that's very, very good. I might suggest that it would be wise to send a note to all of us employees that says, remember to check your emails at least every few days. And you're right, it is so hard to do, and they're usually so long, but I have to do it at the end of each day. I'm here for a little bit of time doing that so that I'm, kind of ready for the next day. But it is challenging.
And
So,
we welcome any additional ideas that you guys
yeah,
have.
that was just personally saying, you better check those emails. You said that you disagree with the processes that we're putting before you in these bills today. One of them is back to, do you feel the data that you were reviewing with us earlier warrants a mental health professional working inside our government, working in your office?
I do not, because I think that we trust the professionals that are working with our vendors, who we have constant, those quarterly meetings are important. Again, they're attending at various times, the monthly wellness meetings. If it would be helpful, we could set up time to sort of review data with you and the council if you believe that that's helpful. But I think that there is a level of trust we can put into our healthcare providers to know that the data they're providing and the claims that they're constantly processing, that we can trust that information that we receive from them.
Have you given any thought to requiring each agency to conduct at least one annual event with all of their staff, such as a retreat or some sort of out of the office activity? So at least all faces can be a part of the landscape of this agency, or maybe for the larger agencies, they may actually, sort of break it down into the different, I think they call their little administrations that they have.
Yes. So as we were rolling out the new policy, one of the things that we did recommend, and in our trainings that we had with managers, we did advise, bringing persons together, not just to talk through and to socialize the policy, but also to use that as an opportunity to enhance the cohesiveness and collaboration that happens. And yes, we are definitely advocates for making sure that persons set aside time to bring those persons together. We do it in DCHR, and we would definitely recommend that it is something all agencies do.
Right. Well, let me, as we are, well, I thought we were getting to the end, but we still have a few more. I want you to know that Bill 25-0782, which is the Work Models Task Force, was not intended to be critical of what the work has been through your office and the mandate that you have promoted throughout our government. But it is a way to look at the picture from a broader perspective. It sounds like what the process that you promoted and put in place over the past months that led to the March 2024 requirement was more internal and pretty much centered around information gleaned from the managers, the directors, or their representatives. So it's very much inside ball game. What we need in this community, as you know, always is to have the opportunity for the public to have input. Transparency is very, very important. We have operated in that manner to a great extent that we're considered one of the most progressive communities in the country because we believe in transparency. So I'm just wondering if what we are proposing in 782 lends itself more to transparency, at least giving the public to eyeball, the necessity of looking at the workplace and what are the hours and what is the schedule and whether or not we have to be in workplace almost 24/7, because there are some of the positions in our government that require that, particularly our law enforcement and first responders, along with many that work in some of the other disciplines that require the hotlines and things like that, that we have before us. So I'm just wondering if you've given thought to that. I know you're seriously opposed to it, at least that's what's in your testimony, but I just want you to understand the background and the rationale for it.
Got it. So first, I think that I would say that our approach to arriving at the work model we've implemented was both internal and external, as we did reach out and collaborate with other government entities and employers as well. I think that from the reading of the legislation, I don't know that we were able to walk away with the same understanding of what you've sort of just vocalized, that it's more about getting information from the public about when the government needs to be operating. I think that the way that we sort of read the legislation was that there was a sort of mixed group of persons getting together to talk about what would be the best work plan or work model for government. And I think the challenge with that is that you would walk away with the perspectives of different persons who think about it solely from their perspective. One of the tight ropes that DCHR is required to walk is that tightrope of how do we best protect the government as an employer and make sure that we keep the employee in mind. That's not a responsibility that all agencies have, nor would it be one that a nonprofit representative would have or other persons. And so the way that we approach what we've done, I think, is rather unique in that we're probably one of the sole agencies that have that dual task to make sure that we are providing an environment to employees that is healthy and sustainable and productive, and at the same time, ensuring that we are protecting the government, ensuring that the government is fulfilling its task and responsibility and mission. And I don't know that many agencies have that dual responsibility.
Thank you for that comment. I guess I'm also thinking about it from the perspective that we do business in this community, and many of our employees, well, some of our employees are residents of the District of Columbia. Not all of them. In fact, I think the majority are not DC residents. Of course, you're going to show me data that dispels that, and I would also like to get that kind of data in the next 2 weeks.
Gotcha.
But seriously, our employees are very much involved in the community, one way or the other, and have long histories in this community. We have new employees. I know you bring on new employees on a regular basis, and they become immersed in our government, as they also become immersed in the community and the lifestyles of our community. So it just seems to me, and we also do a lot of contracting in the community. You know, lion's share of when you take out the salaries for workforce, our government workforce, majority of what's left are contracts. Much of that is within the community. Now, that doesn't say just DC, it's we're in this Washington metropolitan area, this region. And so understanding or having a sense or hearing from those individuals, and those individuals feeling that they are giving the sense that they have a say in the productivity of the District of Columbia government, I think is important. You heard from one of our witnesses today. It's important to have our university involved. And I think I cannot disagree with that. We actually have programs with universities, the capital, what is the City Fellows, as well as the Historic Black Colleges new process. So we have said that all of these entities are important to us. And so I am not suggesting that what has been done through the management structure of our government doesn't have its way. But I'm just simply saying that it's also very useful to bring these other entities into the fold. I am an elected official, and I'm also in this government. So I have to think about how do we make jelly, with the grapes and the sugar and the what have you. I have to think about how do we put all of that together. And I have to think about, of our 37,000, I guess that's where we get to 37, some are part-time, 37,000 employees. I think it's about 26,000 are unionized employees. Wow. Maybe they should have put all of this together when you stop and think about it. And management is seldom unionized. So I'm just suggesting that was some of what motivated us to think that maybe we need to just, maybe to codify what has been the decisions that have been made through the management process. Maybe to look at it, more holistically, because this is a great opportunity for the district government. As you well know, we are technically about 50 years old. We're not Philadelphia, into centuries. We hope to get there one day. But we're relatively young, and this is a great opportunity for us to, do the mixing to get an outcome. And an outcome, I always like to think that we all are buying into, meaning we all will work towards it. So that was our thinking. So I just wanted you to know that's where we're coming from.
Gotcha.
Can you help me this one point? You indicated that making friends and having friends at work makes people happier on the job. Please help me understand that. And I ask it, having come out of the process of looking at the proceeds that we have in place for sexual harassment. So when you talk, because that's usually touching, joking, conversationing, and you heard from one of our witnesses today that it's good to do remote work because you don't have to deal with the noise, the chatter at work. So is making friends, having friends, help me understand that.
Yes. So I think that what you highlight there is, the 5% of Americans who don't think that it is important for them to have that friend at work. But if you think about the workday, you're spending a significant amount of time with people at work. In some cases, more hours than you may with your family. And so I think it's important to have those healthy relationships.
Mhm.
Of course, there are unfortunately, those incidents where people don't understand what a healthy work environment looks like. And so we have instances like harassment or bullying or sexual harassment. But one of the things that people are looking for when they get a job is to ensure that they have those opportunities for connection and collaboration. I think that what we want to make sure that we're doing here in DC government is having a multi-generational workforce. Keeping that in mind, Generation Z, they look for a sense of community that they don't think they're going to get through telework. And so we've got to, as we're bringing people together, we need to make sure that we keep that in mind. Now, they do favor flexibility, so that for 10-hour workday option, that's something that balances all of that. And the approach that we've taken has been a rather balanced one. But people do want to come to work and make connections. One of the things that I'd also highlight is what we saw through the pandemic was that people actually were impacted by the isolation, and that mental health issues not only were highlighted, but were exacerbated by that isolation. And so returning back to work and having those opportunities are important to people. And yet that flexibility, again, that one day or, the 4 10-hour work days allows for someone who says, I need a moment. They have those options there if it's operationally sound. The other thing, and we talked about this earlier, is, making sure that we have a healthy work environment. I think that some of what we implemented during the pandemic, we've got to make sure that we transition them to our workday in the office. So it's important for me to make sure that I get up from my desk and, maybe go take a 15-minute walk. Those same things that are available to us at home are available to us in the workplace. And so we've got to make sure that we don't just isolate those to opportunities that exist because we're working from home.
Thank you very much for that. Sorry about the pollen.
No
I'm
problem.
sorry. In your research, how much impact does having friends at work have on whether someone wants to be in the office?
Yes, so it's 95% who say that that's important for them. And then it is 84% of Americans who say it's harder for them to work remotely because they don't have that opportunity to make friends.
So I guess that takes us to the Gen Z who are very anxious to make the connections. Yeah.
They're anxious, and I would say, I think there are other generations that are equally mindful of making those connections as well. And as we've spoken about before, I think that there is a benefit to being in person as it relates to knowledge transfer, mentoring, all of those sorts of things that those who have been in the government for some time have that expertise. They have the ability to transfer those skills, that knowledge, that understanding in a greater way when they're in person than through telework opportunities.
Have there been discussions or consideration on adopting a new pay and benefit structure to accommodate this new norm in the workplace?
I have not been a part of any of those discussions. no.
Okay. I know generally inflation is causing us to say emphatically we need higher salaries, more benefits, and what have you. But I was just wondering if there had been some discussion about it.
Not that I'm aware of, no, ma'am.
Okay. So, as the Department of Human Resources, what do you do to ensure that employees are productive and providing the necessary services to our residents? Even though they say they're uncomfortable with your March madness.
I think there are a couple of things. One, I think there is a component of this that requires support to managers to make sure that managers are approaching the way that we engage with our employees in an empathetic way and creating employee engagement opportunities, everything from recognition and appreciation moments to your point earlier, making sure there are opportunities where we bring people together for us to just engage in conversation. I think that that's important. I also think it's important, as we were talking about earlier, to provide resources to employees to help them better acknowledge any anxieties and address them. We can't act like we have people who aren't anxious. And we can't act like we didn't come out of a catastrophic, traumatic moment in the pandemic. And we're all, in our various ways recovering and dealing with it. I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we're creating those opportunities for people to, one, get the assistance they need, but also not feel like there's an issue by raising the fact that I may have this anxiety or this fear, or here's a concern as it relates to how I'm going to deal with my childcare issues now. I think providing those opportunities and trainings and just environments where people can sit and talk to them, to their manager or their colleagues about how they can best address these issues is one of the things that we're endeavoring to do at DCHR.
I appreciate that comment. And as you were speaking, I was thinking, would we encourage maybe a set aside time on a monthly basis or every 2 weeks within the work day, a particular day or whatever, where we spend 45 minutes just chatting up whatever we want to chat up and inviting all of the employees to take part, to be a part. Do you think that would move the dime and help us to become more connective, and improve, of course, ultimately the work product, and ultimately the individuals feeling a part of the whole?
I do, and I know that there are some agencies already doing that. Of course, leveraging and continuing to leverage our wellness leaders also provides that opportunity because they can create specific to that agency opportunities to do that and bring people together to, talk about different topics or maybe just have a mental health break. And those are things that our wellness educators can do. I do know that there are some agencies who do have wellness days or retreat days. And I am an advocate for those sorts of things and believe they are helpful.
Fantastic. Well, thank you to everyone who participated in today's public roundtable. I think we've heard valuable information about some of the Department of Employee Services' most critical functions. If the public has any additional thoughts or would like to submit written testimony regarding the performance of these agencies, please email it to seal@dccouncil.gov, and that's CEAL. The hearing record will close in 10 days from today on Wednesday, the 6th of June, 2024 at 5 p.m. Again, I want to thank our public witnesses, and a special thanks to our government witness, Director Charles Hall. You have stood the test with us all this time, and I appreciate you being generous with your responses to our questions. And thank you, everyone, and to your team that's here to support you, and to our public witnesses. In fact, our union representative who is still with us. And yes, I just want to make sure that none of our virtual witnesses are still here. So thank you to all, and to the team that's managing the equipment so that we are on air with everyone. The committee's next meeting will be on Thursday, the 30th of May at 10:30 a.m. and we'll be examining 3 additional bills. One, B25-0315, Middle School Career Exploration Pilot Amendment, and then 25-0744, Pay Our Youth a Fair Summer Wage Amendment Act of 2024, and Bill 25-745, Youth Work Permit and Employment Protection Act of 2024. This concludes today's hearing, and with that, the time is now 1:32 p.m. on May 22nd, 2024, and the meeting is adjourned. And thanks again.